So I'm going to start off the new year with something a little different. I'm actually going to go back and re-review a film that I watched and reviewed a few years ago on this channel. I'm basically going to take another look at the film and go a little bit deeper this time with the review. Sometimes I watch a film and it stays with me. I think about it, and that's definitely the case with He Walked by Night from 1948. I thought this would be a fun film to revisit for a deeper review. This was a black and white crime film, and it starred Richard Basehart as this very methodical, very creepy cop killer on the loose who's always able to just avoid being captured. What I remember from the first time watching this is that his character is largely a mystery in terms of his motivations. All we really see is that he is this quiet, thoughtful, independent character who has this efficient system of attacking and escaping that eludes the efforts of the Los Angeles Police Department as they try to catch him. Well, I'm going to summarize the film, no spoilers at the end, and then offer some closing thoughts about this amazing film. Well, the film opens up with a narrator telling us about the Los Angeles area and the challenge of crime in this growing city. And we see the communication department that's taking messages about crimes from the city, and this leads us to the main feature of this film. A killer is loose in the city. Well, we see the character of Davis Morgan, played by Richard Basehart. He's a shadowy character. He's snooping around at night. Looks like he might be trying to break into a store. Now, he's spotted by a police officer who wants to see his identification. But Morgan draws a gun and fires at him. And this injured cop, he manages to fire back, and Morgan crashes his car, but then he flees. So soon we have Police Captain Breen, actor Roy Roberts, shows up at this scene, and he's there to investigate. He's factual, no nonsense, this Joe Friday type of character. They interview a witness and get a description of the suspect, but they still don't have really much to go on. Now, looking at the car that was left at this scene, they find what looks like Navy electronic equipment. Now, Breen lets Sergeants Marty Brennan, actor Scott Brady, and Chuck Jones, actor James Cardwell, take the case with the warning, "But I don't want any dead heroes." I love it. I mean, how many cop dramas over the years have used dialogue like that? It's so great. Anyhow, a dragnet takes place, bringing in the bad fish of the city. It's mostly just shady characters, a few parole violators, but still no catch on the killer that they're looking for. They get around to questioning suspect Pete Hammond, and hey, it's Frank Cady of Petticoat Junction fame. I guess Sam Drucker must have left Hooterville and turned to a life of crime. Maybe Uncle Joe was driving him crazy, I don't know. Anyhow, after going through the suspects all through the night, they're tired and they haven't found anything to help them. Now, this officer who was shot, meanwhile, he was in bad shape at the hospital, and he doesn't make it. We see his grieving widow receive the bad news from the doctor. Now we cut over to Morgan, and he's at his humble dwelling. He's shaving, and he's listening to the radio. The voiceover narration questions, who is he? What are his motivations? And yet we see here what looks like a decent, clean-cut guy. He's just hanging out at his place. He's got his puppy friend with him. He's smiling and just kind of chilling. It's very uncharacteristic and honestly not what we would expect. Seems like a decent guy, but more on that later. Well, the detectives go and visit with Lee Whitey. He's played by none other than a young Jack Webb of Dragnet fame. He's in the lab. He's doing his forensic tests with some nitroglycerin, and he kind of reveals he hasn't, at this point, found any fingerprints or much to go on. So Morgan goes to sell some stolen electronics equipment that he has rebuilt or stolen. He visits with this electronics store owner, Paul Reeves, played by actor Whit Bissell. I've seen in other films before, like Creature from the Black Lagoon. Reeves doesn't have a clue that Morgan is a baddie, and instead just seems to think that Morgan is this quiet guy who's got potential, and he talks to him. Morgan just listens quietly. Just watch the scene, how he eerily rubs the side of that machine while he's listening to him. Well, when Morgan is told that a projector he has designed would be sure to sell, he promises to bring it, and sure enough brings it the next day and leaves it with them. But soon after, when a customer arrives to get the projector, turns out it was actually stolen. So the police arrive and they question Reeves. And they want to use him to lure this Morgan character in, telling him that the projector was sold so that he'll come back and get his money. They have him stay late that night as a trap. So Morgan can show up, get his money, and then they'll grab him. Well, Morgan comes by that night, slowly and quietly sneaking around. And I love this beautiful black and white as he just hides in the shadows. Look at how his eyes just drift into darkness. I mean, the cinematography from this film is phenomenal. Well, Morgan figures out that this is a trap, and he kind of sneaks up a staircase and then drops down to ambush one of the officers. He clubs one, shoots another, wounding him, but in the process, he gets hit with a bullet himself. He staggers out and sneaks into the shadows. Now, once he gets home, what follows is a scene that honestly really stuck with me the first time I saw this film, and that's the infamous do-it-yourself bullet removal scene. And I know many films have done this since then, but this one I think was very notable. Obviously, being Hays Code era a crime film, we're not going to see all the grisly surgical details, but you know exactly what's going on. By the expression on his face, the pain and the anguish. Morgan has disinfected his medical equipment and he's taken out the bullet himself. There's no music here. Not a lot that you see, obviously. Just that look of excruciating pain on Richard Basehart's face. I mean, it's just watching it still makes you cringe. You know what's going on. Well, back at the police station, the detectives are interviewing Reeves, the guy who was selling the equipment. Now, he really knew nothing about how shady Morgan was. Now, they get a call that Sergeant Jones, he's in bad shape. He may never walk again, which Brennan takes pretty hard. And he snaps at Reeves, but the chief knows that this Reeves character was just gullible and he was being used by Morgan. Now, Morgan, meanwhile, he's back in action. But he's changed his MO and he's now holding up liquor stores using different disguises. And it's here that we see his escape scheme, how he's been successful. He's utilizing the vast underground series of sewer passages, storm drains, 700 miles of hidden highways, the film says. Well, we cut back to Forensic Officer Lee. He's doing a CSI thing, and he tells Breen that his research shows that the bullet casings from the liquor store heists, they match up with those of the earlier shootings. Breen then goes to meet with the robbery victims, and he's able to get a composite drawing made of the thief. And I think this scene is actually really neat in the film, as piece by piece, these various victims identify what Morgan looks like, the style of the hair, the eyes, etc. This early forensic stuff is just wild to me. I love seeing it. They bring in Reeves, and he's able to confirm that this is in fact Davis Morgan, or Roy, as Reeves knew him. They print up his image and they send it all around, but they still have no success in getting anybody in. They even interview people of the underworld, and I love seeing all these organized crime gangster characters, and they all want nothing to do with this guy. He's just a loner. They don't know who he is. Now, Morgan sneaks back to Reeves' home, and after slapping him around a little, he demands some money. He's about to shoot him, but Reeves tells him that the police are watching, and he'd never get away with it. So he just takes the money, beats him up a little more, and then leaves. Now, Captain Breen wants Brennan to take some time off from the case. He says he's been working too hard on it. He needs to take a few weeks off. So Brennan agrees. He goes to visit with his injured partner, Jones, the guy that was shot earlier. He seems to be recovering, but he's still in his wheelchair for now. Jones gives him the idea that because this Morgan guy, he's got this cunning and skill, says maybe he could be a cop. So Brennan leaves and starts inquiring at police departments in the area. Turns out to be nothing but a dead end until at one station he talks to this records guy, Freddie, actor Byron Folger of, once again, you guessed it, Petticoat Junction fame. He happens to remember that Morgan worked there as a civilian employee. And with this detail, it's slowly starting to come together for Brennan. Leave it to a Petticoat Junction regular to help crack the case. Well, Brennan continues his pursuit. He starts interviewing some postal workers, and one gives him a tip that he might have a guy on his route that looks like this suspect. So Brennan goes all undercover as a milkman. Milkman, I love it. The 1940s were awesome. And he's making these deliveries of the milk. And at one place, he intentionally drops and breaks a glass of milk there. And at the door, hearing the noise, is none other than Morgan. Now, Brennan doesn't act, doesn't break character, but he just goes back, goes to the chief, certain that this is their man. And the police gather and plan their big move. Okay, so the end of the film is coming close. What will happen? Can they nab Morgan, or will he just sneak away again? Now, with only the short amount of time in the film, I can't give it away, but it is an amazing ending. It's one that you got to check out for yourself. So some closing thoughts. He Walked by Night was released in 1948, and it was directed by Alfred Worker, with uncredited direction also by Anthony Mann, a legend of old crime films. I've reviewed a bunch of his films on this channel before, like Side Street. Now, this was produced by Eagle Lion Pictures, a studio no longer around, and this one is safely in the public domain, and there are a ton of copies online. The cinematography was by John Alton. It's very noteworthy because, man, it is good. The heavy contrast, the dark shadows, those silhouettes of characters moving through the sewers and so on. It's really gorgeously handled here. He did another film, like Big Combo, in 1955, that I've been reading about, and I hope to review soon. And, please let me know in the comments if there are any other films you can suggest with that heavy noir, shadowy cinematography. I love it. The fog, the heavy contrast, the shadows, all that good stuff. I'd love to see more of it if you have any ideas. I seem to be stuck in a rut of crime films from the 1940s, and, well, I don't mind at all. Now, the story for this film is loosely based on the real-life Irwin Machine Gun Walker. His story is a fascinating one, and I could almost fill up a whole video just talking about his story. I'll try to summarize it a little bit here. Walker had been a civilian employee of the Glendale Police Department prior to being drafted into the U.S. Army for the Second World War. He served over in the South Pacific, where his unit fought with Japanese Army paratroopers. It was there that the war really started to take a toll on him, especially mentally, when the Signal Corps unit that he headed was massacred by these Japanese soldiers. He blamed himself for this, and following his release from the Army in August 1945, his guilty conscience remained. He left his family, and he hid out in a secret workshop. And yeah, as you read his bio, you can kind of see the elements that, inspired a lot of the elements of this film. He started his robbery spree, which included entering an Army ordnance warehouse at night and stealing a number of weapons and committing a series of burglaries for money. Now, he wanted to use this money to finance an invention that he thought would bring an end to the war. It was to be a ray gun of some sort that could turn metal into dust. Okay. He was able to stay ahead of the LAPD for many months. At one point, he was questioned by a suspicious California highway patrolman, and he killed the officer and then vanished into a Los Angeles storm drain. A few months later, he would be caught and sentenced to death for first-degree murder. However, 2 days before his scheduled execution, Walker attempted suicide, and the execution was postponed. He was pronounced insane. He was sent to a state mental hospital for the next 12 years. Now, he was declared sane again in 1961. His sentence was commuted by the governor to life without parole. Now, he was eventually granted parole in 1974 and was released. He legally changed his name, and he worked as a chemist and finally died in 2008. Well, it's a fascinating backstory, and it caught the attention of writer Crane Wilbur, who took the story, particularly those details of the LA sewer system, and put this basically into the story used for this film. Now, I have to comment on Richard Basehart's performance as the character of Davis Morgan, because he is endlessly fascinating in this movie to me. This is a film I've seen a number of times, and I think about the character because he's such a unique villain to a film. He's clever, he's sneaky, he's able to use disguise, able to sneak away and quietly continue his criminal ways. But why does he do it? What drives him? Where did he come from, and how did he get here? Does he have family, a girlfriend, a crazy ex-wife that led him to this life of crime? Other than his doggy friend, he appears to be friendless. The closest thing he seems to have to a friend is that guy Reeves that he sells electronics to. And that's someone who seems to legitimately admire him, of course, until cat's out of the bag regarding who Morgan actually is. So this guy is completely a loner. The film does not give us a lot of background on who he is or what his motivations are. And I think that just adds to the mystery and fascination of his character. Yes, he was based on this real-life Irwin Walker that I mentioned earlier, but while we knew a fair amount of Walker's background, we really don't know much about the character Morgan from the film. He's not just a troubled loner, he's a cold, calculating killer. He's not afraid to kill a cop. He's thoughtful, he's meticulous and skilled at what he does, but we never really see why or what made him like this. Now, maybe some would complain that's a lack of character background, and that's fair. But to me, it just adds to the mystery of his character. He just appears out of shadows and vanishes into shadows. Now, I find that in a lot of old crime films I watch regarding the criminals, the killers are often depicted as creeps. They're abusive, they're mean, or at the very least, they're guys you can't really sympathize with. I think of someone like, Richard Widmark in the movie Kiss of Death, playing that maniacal, laughing killer with a creepy smile, But then compare that to Morgan from this film, and you get someone who's so much different. One of the characters in the film comments that Morgan, he just looked like such a nice kid. He just seems like an average, decent sort of guy. I think of scenes of him alone in his home, he's caring for his dog, giving it some food and hanging out with the dog. It almost makes you feel sympathetic for his character. Almost. The mystery of the guy is what makes the film so good. Anyhow, moving on, I thought it was great seeing a young Jack Webb as that diligent forensic detective doing his CSI-style work, investigating the bullet. And you can see how this production would inspire the Dragnet radio and TV shows that would premiere the following year. Even in the opening credits of this film, they have that disclaimer about only the names are changed to protect the innocent. I love it. One of the things I noticed while watching this film again is that there is very little music, and in a way that adds to the eeriness of the film, namely scenes like the do-it-yourself surgery and the discomfort that you feel. Yes, there were some moments of orchestral film music, but they felt infrequent, and that added to the effect of Morgan creeping in the shadows. No music, and even not a lot of sound effects, as his character just kind of crawls around through the night. Now, my 3 fans know that I love location footage in old films, and there's plenty in this one, namely the usage of the claustrophobic Los Angeles underground sewers and the storm drain system. These sequences are especially eerie to me, seeing Morgan crawl through narrow passages, pipes, and tunnels illuminated only by his flashlight beam. If it was me, I would have brought a backup one just in case. What happens if the thing dies while you're down there? Man. Now, one final fun tidbit, and then I'll wrap this one up. Scott Brady, who played one of the detectives, he was also known for playing the sheriff in the movie Gremlins from 1984. A little bit older and stockier, of course. And for the record, yes, I'm the bozo that when he's watching a film with my wife, I constantly have to do the thing of saying, "Oh, where do I know that guy from?" Yeah, I'm sorry. It's a curse. I just do it. In any case, that's He Walked by Night from 1948, a film so good, I had to review it again. This is noir at its finest, the beautifully filmed crime story with the fantastic lead that, as mentioned, his character is a complete mystery. The police want him, and their dedicated search finally leads to that epic chase in the LA sewers that you just have to see for yourself. This one's in the public domain. There are copies everywhere, so make an effort to go and check this one out. It's definitely one that's worth watching.
The killer, always resourceful, always thinking along lines that would baffle his hunters, had discovered an ideal avenue of escape. Under Los Angeles is a vast and intricate system of huge storm drains built to siphon off the flash floods of the rainy season. Many of the tunnels are large enough for 2 cars to drive abreast. Here were 700 miles of hidden highways, ideal for the use of someone who needed to hurry from place to place without being seen. ideal as a hiding place for guns and supplies in case of emergency.